New polls show he is still the front runner in the race for governor. Will Ned Lamont be the first Democrat to win that race since 1986? Mr. Lamont is our guest now. A 24-year drought for your party. Wow, that's tough. How do you convince voters that Democrats should be running the whole shebang? Because they're likely going to win the General Assembly again. And now, if you're elected, there'll be a Democrat in charge.
Well, hey, Dennis, it's great to be back.
Good to have you.
I think you tell folks, look, for 20-plus years, you've had Republican governor, Democratic legislature, checks and balances. I bet it's going to work. Make sure that nobody goes off half-cocked, and it hasn't worked. It's been a blame game. We've been slipping backwards. And I think the voters of Connecticut say, look, I'm ready for somebody who's going to step up as a CEO, somebody who says, hold me accountable, somebody who can work with the legislature, a little bit of tough love, though, sometimes, come up with an honest budget and get this state growing again.
But has the legislature done a good job? I mean, for a while, they had a supermajority. They could have done whatever they wanted. They could have helped reduce the budget. And they kept saying no to various cuts that were proposed by the governor.
I don't know about those various cuts. It seems to me you need a governor to step up and say, look, I've taken the best advice from everybody around the table. Here's my solution. If you have a better solution, I'm ready to hear it. But, as a business guy, CEOs take responsibility. The buck stops here. I'm going to be a governor that proposes an honest budget.
We're going to talk about your job creation plan a little bit later, but there clearly need to be cuts made somewhere in the state budget. And many people are saying that the unions are going to have to take concessions. On a practical level, do you think that it's appropriate for a union employee to have better benefits and maybe pay less for those benefits than someone in the private sector?
I think everybody is going to have to make concessions. We're all going to be at that table together, and we're going to make real substantial cuts going forward. You're going to have to show the taxpayers that we're doing everything we can to manage this deficit.
What kind of cuts?
I'd start with management. I look at the many layers of management. I look at the duplicity there. I look at the number of folks that really don't have strong executive background. A lot of them are political cronies. I would go right there. I'd replace those folks with strong, independent executives. Republicans or Democrats, folks who know how to manage, folks who know how to use information technology, and folks who know how to work with our frontline state employees to make these departments run more efficiently.
You've studied the budget. Specifically, who would you cut? Which jobs? And which jobs would you replace?
Yeah. I'd start at the top. I'd start with the governor's salary and saying, I'm not taking any salary until we get an honestly balanced budget.
So no salary?
I'd go with the commissioners and say, look, I expect you to lead by example. Then I'd go to the deputies and those below. I'd see how many layers of management do you need? I mean, my gosh, it's layer upon layer upon layer, and they don't listen to or work with the state employees. That's where I'd start.
You've been endorsed by some unions. Have you told the unions that they need to be prepared to maybe take some pay cuts or benefit cuts?
I've told everybody that we are going to be in this thing together. One of the labor leaders told me, they said, Ned, I've heard you say time and again, labor is going to have to be at the table if we're going to get this solved. Working with you, we'll be at the table, but make sure I'm not the only guy at the table. That's the spirit that we're going to go into this, and that's how we're going to reduce the deficit.
You've been talking about the key to reducing the deficit is creating jobs. How would you do that? Would it be tax cuts to get people to open a business?
In part. Look, I'll tell you.
Where can you afford a tax cut?
I'll tell you. We spend over $300 million a year in tax incentive, tax giveaways, tax credits, trying to attract big business across the border. The banks, the hotel management companies, it hasn't worked. Not one net new job in 20-plus years. Over $300 million a year. So, Dennis, I would focus on small and mid-sized businesses, the guy that comes out of small business. I would eliminate the business entity tax. I would speed up the permitting process. I would triple the funding for Connecticut innovations and give access to capital to these entrepreneurs so they get ready for the public markets and ready to grow their business.
Let's talk about a decision the governor recently made. A company wanted to move out of East Hartford. They're going to Windsor, I believe. They're going to be getting $3 million from the state to make that move. Is that good business practice to help one business move from one town, one suburb to another? Because
Probably
it's devastating in East Hartford. It
Probably
really is.
not. You're setting a precedent. Everybody whose lease is coming up is going to say, I know I can go back to the state of Connecticut and I'll be able to get a giveaway from them. By the same token, in the governor's defense, you want to do everything you can to save those jobs. But I, broadly speaking, would get rid of these tax incentives, giveaways as much as I can, reduce the corporate tax, eliminate the business entity tax, and give the business community some certainty that this is where you want to grow and expand your jobs.
So if a company comes to you and says, Governor Lamont, we are going to be moving to Atlanta because it's much cheaper, what are you going to do for us? What can you do?
Well, first of all, they won't be coming to me. I will have come to them in that first, 6 months as governor. I would have gone there and said, what do you need to grow? What do you need to expand? Is it the high price of energy? Is it affordable housing? Is it lack of transportation? Maybe you need the community colleges to come up with the programs. You have access to the engineers you need. I would not be caught by surprise like we were when the executive from UTC went down to New York and said, compared to Connecticut, every other state is low cost. We'd be ahead of that curve.
You have said that we've not earned the right to raise taxes. What would it take to earn the right to raise taxes?
Go out there, show the taxpayers we're going through every item of the budget, not only in terms of management and reducing line items, but more importantly in terms of broad reforms. As you probably know, this week we came out with real health care reforms, and we detailed hundreds of millions of dollars of savings in our budget. That's almost 40% of the state budget, Dennis, is health care related. And that's an even bigger piece of our discretionary spending. So you're not going to be able to reduce the deficit unless you reform our delivery of health care, and that's what our plan does.
But you won't take a pledge for no new taxes?
I can't make a pledge I can't promise I can keep, no.
Let's talk about an issue that's come up that's sort of clouding your other messages, and that's your refusal to do any more debates. So far, our records show you've only done one-on-one debate with your Democratic opponent, Dan Malloy. And in 2006, you were this refreshing outsider who was challenging Senator Lieberman to debate anywhere he'd do it. And, as journalists, quite frankly, we're disappointed that there's not going to be a debate.
Well, the TV guys are a little disappointed, but Dennis, as you know, I've done 25-plus forums and debates, many one-on-one with Dan. We've done a televised
Only
debate
one with Dan.
him. I've done a televised forum with him and the other folks, and we've signed on to another debate in Wyndham in a couple of weeks. Come on up, televise that if you want. We're out there taking our message to the voters. We're doing town hall forums. Today we did a public health forum. We're getting our message out to voters any way we can.
Well, let me put it this way. Our Democratic debate here on WFSB is going to be a joint production with CPTV and WNPR. That's 3 hours of political coverage on a Tuesday, a week before the primary, reaching thousands of potential viewers and listeners. And there's an argument that could be made that this might reflect on your decision-making process. Why would you turn that down and allow your opponent to have all that airtime to himself? And what are you going to be doing that day instead?
I'll be out there, probably at a diner, then going on doing a public forum with taxpayers and voters, maybe in Naugatuck or Willimantic. I'll be out there talking to folks any way that I can. Look, debates are great. We've done, like I said, dozens of debates and forums, but I'm not positive, Dennis, that how do you plan to balance the budget? Please limit your response to 1 minute or less is the only way to get your message out. I enjoy interchanges like this. I think it's a pretty good give and take.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you having you on. Now, we are told that roughly, if you wanted to get the same amount of people that this debate's going to provide, you would have to fill the XL Center and Rensselaer Field with people who would want to listen to you talk for an hour. I mean,
maybe you're right. I watched that debate last night, and I understand that most of the TV sets changed the channel to Jeopardy within about the first 30 seconds.
That is correct, although thousands of people still did watch it.
I don't rule anything out. We'll take a look and see. But right now, I'm not convinced that having little one-on-one back and forth with your talking points is the ideal way to get your message out. This state is in a world of hurt right now, and you need somebody to come up with a real strategy and plan to move it forward. That starts with jobs and real reforms. I can't necessarily do that in a minute, but I love going around doing these town hall forums, talking to people, and letting them know this is how we get the state of Connecticut going again. And it starts with jobs.
So you're not ruling out the August 3rd debate? Is it a definite no, or you're now reconsidering?
Probably not, but I'll take a look at anything. We get, dozens of offers every week.
But this is the debate of the season.
Well, that's what all the TV guys say.
Well, I mean, if you look at the ratings, this is going to be, we have 3 organizations together, radio, 2 television stations.
Hey, look, the point is, You need a governor who says, hold me accountable. You need a governor who's ready to go in front of the voters of the state of Connecticut and say, I have a plan, start growing jobs. This is a state that's gotten left behind for many, many years. Democrats and Republicans alike. It's time for somebody from the outside, somebody who's a challenger, somebody from a different background. If these were sort of normal times, Dennis, maybe another legislator or a mayor would be good. They can nickel and dime around the edges. I think you need an entrepreneur. I think you need a business person. I think you need somebody who can fundamentally change the way we're doing business in Hartford, and that's how we'll start growing jobs in our state.
A quick question for you about immigration. We asked Senator Blumenthal this same question. He said that the state should be going after companies that employ illegal aliens. As governor, would you go after companies in New Haven that are hiring illegal aliens? As you know, Mayor DeStefano has issued ID cards to these illegal immigrants. Would you go after those companies?
Well, my understanding is it's really the feds that are responsible for doing that. But the fundamental question is, what's the best way to deal with illegal immigration? And I agree with Dick, it's at the place of employment. As long as there are employers ready to hire folks who don't have the proper documentation, they'll always have a magnet. They'll keep coming across our border. No matter how high a wall you put along the Rio Grande, they'll put a ladder that's a little higher to cross over. So you've got to stem the demand. That means strict enforcement of our labor laws at the point of employment. Yes.
As a governor, would you encourage INS to come to New Haven and crack down?
I would encourage that we enforce the laws of the land. And then I'd really encourage comprehensive immigration reform, the likes of which we've been kicking the can around for a while.
In our final moments, I want to ask you, why should someone choose you over your opponent, Dan Malloy?
Well, again, if these were normal times, I think maybe you'd go with a legislator or a mayor or somebody with a more traditional political background. I'm the first to admit I don't have that traditional political background. I was elected 4 times in my hometown. I did serve as a teacher. I've been involved in policy. I did run 4 years ago. And I think they know from 4 years ago that I'm not afraid to stand up and challenge. I took on the Democratic establishment as well as the Republican establishment. And I'm going to go up to Hartford, and I think people know I'm not afraid to challenge the old way of doing business there. And frankly, look, it could be a tough 4-year gig. I'd be proud if we were able to change the direction of this state and move on and say I've done my job.
Ned Lamont, Democratic candidate for governor. Nice to see you back here, Mr. Lamont.